Disney seems hell-bent on making live-action remakes of everything. Now, the early stuff had some great success, things like Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King, and yes, Aladdin. But since then, things have been kind of going downhill. The Little Mermaid was a big flop at theaters, especially when compared to its budget and what it easily should have done. Probably $1.5 billion closer to Barbie. And the next thing up on the list is Snow White, the live-action remake of Snow White, now pushed back to March of 2025. And this production, God knows how many times it's been shot and reshot and redone and reworked, is probably going to finish up with darn near a $400 to $500 million gross spend just to get this film into theaters. Might be one of the most expensive things that Disney has ever done. But apart from bad planning and bad ideas, one of the biggest problems of this film has been the star playing the titular role. And if there's one piece of advice I can give her, it's shut up, Rachel.
There was 2 articles that caught my attention on this. I'm like, it's too good. So now, this coordinated pushback from Disney, because I think they already know this movie is going to be an absolute disaster. Everything that we know about this movie so far suggests that it's going to be an absolute disaster. We know that Disney has been trying to put this movie together now for years. They had basically shot everything, and then the images leaked of what was going on set. People were horrified. We talked about the Warwick Davis story earlier that tacitly ties to this. Disney was obviously so taken aback by the backlash, which happened at the same time. Not only what they did with this movie and saying, hey, they're not dwarves. They're 7 magical people from the weed store in Starbucks. And the
dirty hippies.
Yeah, 7 dirty hippies. And I was like, what? Who the hell was Snow White and the 7 dirty hippies? And Disney threw the wrench on this thing. They lied. They straight lied and used the actor strike and the writer strike as an excuse as to why they weren't going to put it out in March. Straight lied. They were still 6-7 months away. The movie was nearly done. They didn't have to pull the plug because of the strike. That was bull crap. Okay? We knew why they did it. They did it because Rachel Zegler had a big mouth. They did it because Rachel Zegler went out there and acted like a snot-nosed little millennial brat or Gen Z brat. Probably more Gen Z, I guess, at her age. I can't tell them apart anymore.
She's the anti-Jenna Ortega.
Yeah. And she said, you know, Snow White was weird. The prince falling in love with her and stalking her was weird. And it's an old movie that doesn't understand the modern audience and women. And this movie isn't going to be about Snow White falling in love. This is going to be about Snow White finding her truth and her power and all this. And immediately everybody's like, so you're not making Snow White. Okay.
We're gonna fix that stinky Walt. That stinky Walt, that old stinky white man and his stinky story. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix it and make it modern, and we're gonna make it be cool again to have women be powerful as opposed to stinky Walt.
And what was really terrible, Pro, was the fact that all of this happening. I mean, this wasn't even this year. I can't believe this was a year ago. We were taking those images of Snow White set and putting them on YouTube.
Or as we like to measure it, Valiant, 3 reshoots ago.
3 reshoots ago. That was hot on the heels of the failure of The Little Mermaid. Disney could ill afford another humiliation. And now we're talking about a movie that, let's face it, is probably going to be, you know, we're talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp and the Marvels combined for nearly $760 million in gross costs. This movie alone is probably going to be north of 400. It seems like it's going to have to be. So we're starting to get the Save Our Butts article. Snow White named for her resilience, right?
These go well every time.
She's named Snow White because her skin was as white as snow. That's the fairy tale. So now Disney's going to try to backpedal on this one.
They're hoping they get the Barbie audience. That's the last play they have, Valiant. So they're going to go for the Barbie audience as hard as they can.
Yeah. So this Snow White, not the original Snow White, this new Snow White is not named for her pale complexion. No. She's, still a German princess, I guess, but it's not named for her pale complexion.
No.
Colombian-
She's a socialist liberator in Germany now.
Yes. Colombian-American actress Rachel Zegler says that the character, Snow White, received her name because of her resilience in surviving a snowstorm.
She's
We're
like
going with
Davy
this-
Crockett fighting a bar, but she fights blizzards as an infant.
We're going with a slightly... Does that mean that this is how the movie's going to open? It's gonna be like
Hypothermia
snow-
came to kill Zegler, and she said no.
Wasn't that Snow White and the Huntress or whatever? The Huntress, the Snow White, like they did like that dark version of Snow White, that different version of the fairy tale.
No, Valiant. You see,
Disney's
they
going with
tried to
that one.
find an environment that Zegler could survive, and the icy cold veins survived well in Arctic temperatures. So they said that's the origin we'll use.
Yeah. So in contrast to the text and to the original 1937 Disney animation, which, hey, anytime that you're going to make a live action remake of an original Disney product, which was their version of Snow White that was so beloved, and you're going to deviate from that, it has worked every time Disney's done it. Right. This one.
They're also changing the color of the snow in this because they said the snow was too white.
Yes, that's yellow snow in this one.
Got to diversify the precipitation.
Yeah. Rachel Zegler says it fell back to another version of Snow White that was told in history, where she survived a snowstorm that occurred when she was a baby. And the king and queen decided to name her Snow White to remind her of her resilience. One of the core points in our film for any young woman or young person is remembering how strong you actually are.
Somebody should have made her Google that right there.
Yeah.
By history, she means a boardroom two weeks ago.
And here's the new dwarves. Remember, not the original ones, but the new ones right here. And here's not weird Rachel Zegler doing a...
Weird.
Why does she look like
it's like she's wearing one of Madonna's
from Final
bras.
Fantasy?
No. She looks like she's wearing one of Madonna's bras from the 90s, but she stuck it in the Zelensky machine and made it bigger. Same thing with the
And
rest
she's
of her
doing the
clothes.
robot. And she's doing the robot.
Like she just made everything 2 sizes too big.
Yeah, I don't know. This seems like a desperate, we got to get bailed out here because we are in trouble with this one. But what makes it more fun, I don't know if you saw this one. Cinderella star Brandy says Rachel Zegler will be incredible as Snow White for every little Colombian girl.
Well, that's a big demographic.
Somebody should have asked Brandy the last time she was relevant.
Probably Cinderella in 1997. And she
Well,
was
I'll tell you
huge
this,
back
I
then.
bet-
I mean, I understand why they wanted to do that back then. Brandy was a huge star at that point. And they
Nobody
said,
cared then either.
But this is what they do. They reach out to Brandy. They
That was
ask her
geared to
questions.
kids.
What is Brandy supposed to do? Is she supposed to be like, oh no, she's a piece of trash and this movie's going to flop? And oh, by the way, I hope I'm never hired again in Hollywood. Of course she's going to say something nice because they called her. She's stuck. She's in a corner. She didn't get.
I know.
Listen, Brandy didn't come out of her own accord and make the statement. This was a request put to her, and her publicist probably wrote it.
Let me read the quote, and then I'm gonna let you take off on your thoughts because I was kind of thinking the same. I was like, Brandy got a phone call. She's like, haven't had that Disney money in a while.
I'm
she
curious
says,
what she's been up to. I think she's just been sitting up in her room.
I don't know.
That was a deep cut. Nobody got it, evidently.
It was from the TV show, wasn't it?
No, it was from her song. It was one of her songs.
Oh, okay. Well, I know she did that TV
Sitting
show
up
on
in my
Disney.
room. It might have been in the show for all I've known.
That's why I was thinking it. I mean, I was thinking it was from her Disney TV show.
I feel like we've let the audience down. Tom is the only connoisseur of Brandy music.
So let me read this, and y'all have some fun for a minute here.
We need to know this topic better, clearly.
Yeah. Brandy says, you're not taking on this role to fit the mold of the critics, Brandy told Variety. So this is a Variety interview. This is in People, but this was from
Then
Variety.
she said, the boy is mine.
You're doing this for every little Colombian girl who has yet to see themselves in a role like a Disney princess. You're doing this for the little girl that you once were, who grew up without that representation of her Colombian culture.
Oh, that's
You're
what Snow White
showing
means.
her that anything is possible for someone who looks like her And that is the most important job in the world. Why are we worried about Colombian representation in Snow White? Help me out here, guys. What the hell am I missing?
Tom,
I mean,
I'll
if you
take
got...
it. Go ahead, Tom.
No, go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, I'll take it, then I'll hand it to you. I am personally offended for all of the little Argentinian girls out there who have yet to get representation. The Chilean girls, the Paraguayan girls, the Uruguayan girls, the Nicaraguan girls, every single girl and culture not represented. By the way, Tom, did you know that there is an indigenous people in Chile called the Mapuches? And the Mapuches have not been represented yet by Disney. They have been left out in the cold southern Andes by Disney's inability to represent every single culture on planet Earth within their films. And that's just starting on the Latina side of things. We don't have a single representation by an Ethiopian actress of a formerly European-centric star or tale yet. And I think, frankly, that Disney is clearly bigoted, and so are all of the people working on this film for not realizing that every dwarf, Tom, should have been a woman, and every dwarf should have been from a different underrepresented country in the world so that we could free little girls from their underrepresented statuses all over. Tom, your thoughts?
I mean, after all that, I mean, at this point, I would just be happy if Disney would just free little girls in general, because we all know there's probably...
Well, they will, Tom, unless they're near a Mulan production. The other thing about this, too, is it's yet again another use of the race shield, right? They're using Brandy as a shield against criticism of terrible CGI, a horrible trailer, historically disliked at a level we've never seen before, and they go to a woman who had a successful movie, and she actually broke the glass ceiling, and everybody loved it. Nobody was complaining about Brandy and Cinderella, and they go to her and they say, Brandy, we need you as a shield. You will be the defense that we use.
Actually, it kind of is what they're doing here. Because, I mean, this isn't like, you know, okay, like they specifically reached out to her to get her reaction to this because she was the Black Cinderella, right?
Right. And she was successful at it.
Yeah, and that's because back then we didn't think about shit like that. We didn't care because they weren't making such a big deal about it, as we've pointed out here, and you said before. Back then, Brandy was a big deal. I think did she even have a show on Disney Channel or something like that to where the synergy was there and all that kind of business? But in this case, this isn't like when that's what this is. This isn't like when they, you know, see Alicia Silverstone somewhere and they ask her, would you ever come back to play Batgirl again, giving that poor girl the idea that she still has a career, you know, and what is she supposed to say, right? Well, of course I would. But what is Brandy or her representative supposed to say to a question like this?
Right. They're not, they can't say, well, that Zegler girl, I've heard she's a vicious piece of scum. I would never want to work with her or brag about her abilities.
They wanted a quote. And I mean, obviously this was coordinated, right? We have this Rachel Zegler piece.
Valiant, do you think Brandy actually, when they got the call, do you think Brandy knew that Zegler, do you think she follows Zegler's career and knew that she was Colombian? Or did somebody at Variety have to say, by the way, could you say something about the fact she's Colombian?
I would say so. I mean, look
there's
at
no
the
way Brandy was like, oh
dates.
yeah, Zegler, she's Colombian.
Yeah.
I know that girl.
So, I mean, the first thing here, we had this publication and the Variety interview that came roughly around the same time, maybe, I think a couple days before, maybe. This is in People magazine, published October 3rd, this comment from Brandy. And then 2 days later, we have this from the UK Telegraph with Rachel Zegler talking about, to reinforce what Brandy said, effectively, is this is just putting it's a different origin story. So that's why she doesn't have to look a certain way, or this isn't what the name really means anymore. Yada yada yada. I mean, this is
what you're not going to see, Valiant. You're not going to see anybody give a quote that says that Gal Gadot, well, the reason she played Wonder Woman, the reason she needs to be the evil queen and look more beautiful than Snow White is because she needs to be there for every underrepresented Israeli girl.
The Colombian-American star, Rachel Zegler, has previously hit back at critics over her casting for the role in a since-deleted X post, saying that she would not be, quote, bleaching her skin to be Snow White. I didn't remember seeing that one. I remember hearing about that one.
That's how we kicked off the whole controversy from the very beginning. The fans didn't do it. The critics didn't do it.
I guess I'd forgotten about that one.
This nut job put that out at the very beginning. She is anathema. She is poison. She is absolute venom to any box office success. She preemptively strikes whatever studios opportunities might exist. She is the opposite of what anybody should be looking forward to for PR from a young actress. She
I think
did
you're
this
wrong.
to herself and the whole thing.
I think you're wrong. Venom's going to do much better at the box office than this will.
All right, you've made a good point.
And Dennis in the chat says, are there any Colombian fairy tales? There may be, Dennis. I'm sure there is. But if there's any snow in them, it sure as hell ain't this kind of snow.
And I want to read one more quote from this.
We need more Panamanian princess stories. I mean, Disney's really missing the boat here.
A University of Surrey professor, and again, because this is from the UK Telegraph, University of Surrey professor who specializes in feminism. Thank God for them, huh?
Oh,
and Disney,
is she in the documentary?
And Disney princess. Now, wait a minute.
Was she captured by Walsh?
Let me say this again. A University of Surrey professor who specializes in feminism and Disney princesses.
Oh, that's two different tracks, of course.
Who the hell
She's got two
specializes?
PhDs.
Okay. Told the Telegraph that her research, this is like the same chick that they hired as a specialist in Japanese history to advise on Yasuke in AC Shadows, right? So here we go. Told the Telegraph that her research has shown that Disney's Snow White as a, quote, passive dreamer. Dr. Robin Muir said she is, Snow White, a princess whose narrative constructed her as a helpless victim who desired a romantic relationship. Speaking about the forthcoming film, Dr. Muir said, quote, what tends to happen in live-action adaptations, however, is a redressing of some of the more outdated traits for a contemporary audience. Quote, while previous Disney princess live-action adaptations have sometimes struggled to create authentic feminist heroines, it will be interesting to see how the Snow White adaptation redresses some of the problematic elements and tropes in the story for a contemporary audience. Guys and girls watching, what do we always say about the modern audience? It never seems to materialize, does it?
Wait a minute. It's time out. Rewind just a little bit there, like 2 paragraphs up.
I figured there'd be some comments here.
Now, first of all, passive aggressor dreamer.
All I can tell you guys
she's a
is
teenage girl who dreams a lot.
A 16-year-old girl, right? Snow White's like about 16, like most other Disney princesses, like Ariel and most of these other characters.
She's a helpless victim who desired a romantic relationship. Okay. So what's wrong with the latter? I think most people in general, not just women, at some point want to be loved.
Here we go.
Can I just share this? I've been learning so much while you have been talking about
I figured you might be Googling in the background. Yeah.
I've learned so much. She's fascinating. She has 1,000 followers, and she started some sort of, I don't know. We won't make fun of her too much.
And a DHD.
Just so everyone knows what kind of person we're dealing here with and who they find to give these kinds of quotes. Dr. Muir from June 11th says,
really excited to be joining Sex Ed Forum today to talk about how to challenge gender stereotypes with a little help from my friends, the Disney princesses.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that was a real winner of a talk. She's a well-balanced person. In case we're wondering who we're dealing with here, who they reach out to find out what their expertise is. Sex Ed with Disney princesses.
And just like, and we're going to get to this in a little bit, this whole issue with Ubisoft and how much of a mess it really is inside and why things are going the way they're going. Because like we tell folks, I know there's not a lot of hardcore gamers that watch this channel, but we keep reminding folks that, you know what, a lot of what's going on in the gaming industry is the exact same thing that's been going on here in the Hollywood industry for some time. And it's important to understand how connected that they are in terms of trajectory. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, this is like this person here that claims to be specializing in feminism, a professor at the University of Surrey specializing in feminism and Disney princesses. This is a DEI consultant. This is a Sweet Baby Inc., right? This is that kind of individual where their specialty is looking at the quote-unquote tropes and dismantling them for the modern audience, which almost always results in absolute catastrophic financial failure for the companies that actually go along with this. Disney, I'd love to say that Disney has been duped into thinking that this is the way to go, but I think we all know by this point, pretty inarguably, that Disney itself is steeped in this. I don't think every game studio is. I think a lot of game studios out there are actual victims of this BS sales pitch. But Disney is somebody that is themselves very much in alignment with it from day one. So they're going to keep going down this road. And that chat I brought up a little while ago that I thought was so funny was, wait a minute, basically, like, we had Colombian representation, did we not, in Encanto? Just recently.
Sure, yeah.
And so, I mean, that
they're
whole
not
movie
diversifying
was,
their South American countries.
yeah, I mean, it's just like, what are we talking about here? You know, it's like all of a sudden, like, the Snow White is going to be breaking the mold to give Colombian girls representation. That was the entire movie of Encanto, was it not?
Well, Valiant, you saw our exclusive reporting that there were three finalists to play Snow White. One of them was Rachel Zegler. One was a young Latina actress named Renata Vaca, and another was an unnamed African-American lady. And this was given to us exclusively by Polly of Latino Slant, who had talked to Renata Vaca, who went on to star in City of Dreams, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Disney was courting controversy, and they've got it. And who did they want to lead the charge in the controversy? Zegler. They knew who they were hiring. They knew she was a lightning rod. They knew she is imbecilic and will ignite controversy wherever she goes. Mission accomplished, Disney.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.